All right, welcome to another episode of On Foodable, and we are here at the Restaurant Innovation Summit in Atlanta with the National Restaurant Association, and we're focusing on kind of this whole evolution of executive trends and issues around the industry. And as you've seen on some of our episodes, we've covered mobile payment, we've talked about the evolution of the restaurant industry and trends around it, and now we're going to talk about some of the tools and kind of the everyday functionality that consumers and brands get to face, and that's talking about apps and the mobile web and all that. I've got with me some great people to talk about this today, so let's just jump right into it. Tell me a little bit about Mellow Mushroom.
Absolutely. Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers, based here in Atlanta, Georgia, just celebrating now our 40th anniversary, actually, so we've been around for a long time.
Yep.
Right at 173 units this week. Primarily in the southeast, great. A little further out. We are expanding westward and upward, but the southeast is really the core of the brand, obviously starting here in Atlanta. We're casual dining, full bar, pizza, salads, hoagies. We always say we're not Italian, but we are pizza concept, nice. Stone-baked pizza.
Yeah, love it. There you have them in Florida, so we get to frequent those down in our neck of the woods. David, a little bit about you and your business.
Sure, I'm David Bloom. I'm the CEO of Order In. Order In is an open technology platform for restaurant food ordering. What that means is that we have software that helps restaurants connect with new kinds of applications where people can discover those restaurants and order food. We've been doing this for about 4 years. We have investment from organizations like Google Ventures, and we're probably right around Halloween. We'll cross the 16,000 restaurant mark, and we're accelerating our growth of the restaurants that use us.
All right, so David, you guys are the company that kind of are the backbone of where menu, as I understand it, starts to populate in apps and or even the web searches.
Yeah, that's right. General. Our mission is to create new ways for restaurants and consumers to engage and transact. So we provide this infrastructure that connects restaurants with food ordering or into their POS to take their data, their menus mostly, and push it out into the world where people can discover it, and not just discover it, but order from it. Right. So we think of us as a transactional menu distribution system.
Right.
Travel has systems like us, the multiple listing services in real estate is like us, or in some cases even payment processors behave like we do.
Sure.
We're a transactional distribution service.
Yeah. So let's talk about the topic of the hour, which is kind of this mobile app and mobile web. The evolution, of course, of the smartphone, the high adoption rate, and now we are at critical mass, and it's getting serious out there in terms of use. So with all this happening, and of course now we've got mobile payment really starting to flow into this, and so many new, really interesting technologies that are kind of adding to everybody's daily quality of life. You know, I know I use a certain set of apps that are perfect, but there's a few things that I do on the web, you know, versus an app. So I kind of weigh it out as a consumer, but I want to kind of get your thoughts on where you see kind of the adoption of apps versus mobile web. Monica, let's talk a little bit here. Or Annica.
Yeah, I definitely think, to your point, you made a good point about apps. They really have to bring some value to your life in some way, shape, or form. You know, for example, a Delta app, very simple to check in. It holds my boarding pass, as opposed to like Delta Mobile Web. Right. You know, so it has to have a value add, and I think, you know, within the restaurant space, we're no different. We have to have some value add within the app. Depending on what the brand is, that may be very different, right, from brand to brand, with the way that consumers engage. For a lot of people, it might be that mobile pay is critically important. Mobile ordering may be critically important, depending on the platform.
Yeah.
For us, it's kind of consumer engagement and really heightening our relationship with our loyal consumers. So I think it depends on how the brand engages with their consumers, you know, what consumer expectations are, but I think it definitely has to bring something else to your life that just a web search of location and menu is not going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, it's all about, you know, what makes the 1, 2, or 3 screen on my iPhone. Everything that's past that, it's like I probably haven't used it in 6 or 8 months.
Or it's in a folder.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it used to be.
Then
like,
I never see it again.
Old media was like above the fold. New media is, you know, first screen of apps, right? So,
that's interesting. Yeah. David, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, kind of this move of web versus app.
Well, I have some things that I consider sort of absolutes and some things that I think the restaurant needs to think through critically for themselves and make some important decisions. the argument over whether it's important to have your restaurant available to consumers on a mobile environment, whether that's through an app or the mobile web, is long gone.
Yeah.
Like, you just have to be there, right? Otherwise, your competition is, and the restaurant, your customer is just going to pass you by.
Sure.
So if you're not doing it, do it. Now the decision is, how do you do it? Well, I'm a big believer in the mobile web. I think long-term, having at least your restaurant's basic information available to people who are doing a search, chances are if they're doing a basic search for you, they're looking for something specific. Your address, directions, your menu, hours of availability, phone number, make that available to them. Then the question is whether you have some kind of enduring value, like Annica talked about, that would make it relevant for them to be in for you to have an application that your customers want to download.
Right.
And when you start to look into that, you are now starting to think about making a much more significant investment in how you engage with your customers using mobile, and then you need to do some hard thinking about why do we want to do this, what are the ultimate goals, and and if we think there's a reason to have an app, how do we go about doing it?
Yeah, sure. Do you think we may see a division of app web for brands that say, okay, on the web we know we're going to do this over here, which is kind of the utilitarian side of our business, but over here we're going to shift our model or strategy to do something that's a really killer component within our business? Do you feel like that might be where both can live harmoniously?
I definitely think that. I think, to your point, mobile web, it's highly functional, right? And really the simpler the better, because I'm probably, chances are I may be in a car doing something like that. My time is very limited in how far I want to go, how deep do I want to go. I want that information very quickly. Whereas with an app, I think, again, maybe simplicity of first screen, but then I want to maybe be able to drill down to some different things that I want to be able to find within the app that I might not, take the time or have the interest on the mobile side because it's just strict functionality. I want to call the place. I need to find out what time do you close tonight. Do I have time to pick up food before I get home?
Yeah. I think a little history lesson is also important here. Apps were created and became prevalent because the ability to render HTML and provide easy user experiences on the mobile web was incredibly limited.
Yeah, wasn't there.
But just a few days ago, the organization that is behind HTML5 and mobile optimized web declared HTML5 feature complete. And so now you're looking at much more robust capabilities on the mobile web than you did before. And now all the trade-offs you had in terms of fighting for that piece of real estate on the phone, well, the trade-off is it's less clear which is the right way to go because you can now do things on mobile web that you really couldn't before.
Right.
The question is, how do you now train a consumer to think of you as a mobile web and come to you on the mobile web when the last 7 years of mobile phone experience and tablet experience has been around applications.
Sure.
A downloadable app. I think consumer training is going to be a bigger issue now than the technical training because we've sort of trained them that the shortcut is the way to go.
Right. And we may be talking about a very trivial issue in 10 years, which is that the separation of that never really mattered, that the proliferation of use of mobile and devices that are going to be more augmented with how they notify us. Yeah. We won't even need an app or barely a phone.
I think what you just said is actually a really important point, which is in 10 years.
Yeah.
Forget 10 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Could be just
It could be 2. Yeah. It could be 6 months. Restaurants have often thought of themselves as fixed assets.
Right.
You invest in a piece of real-world real estate, you train your staff, develop a menu, you set marketing, you make a parking lot. It's like building a car, right? The technology world is not like building a car. Software iterates quickly, and consumers consume it much differently than they do tangible physical assets in the real world. So what I urge restaurants to do is carve off a piece of their brain and to think about technology and engaging consumers, especially mobily, and I think of mobily as not in your restaurant, not necessarily just your phone, but not in the restaurant and not through analog tools, where you are willing and you to that hard gut check as an organization that we are going to move way faster out here. We're going to try different things. we're not going to lose our brand or lose ourselves, but we know that we can't sit around and watch whether Instagram continues to be an important channel for 3 years,
Sure.
or whether apps versus HTML5 and the mobile optimized web is going to be important in 5 years. We got to make decisions now, see how it goes, and then change if we have to.
Interesting concepts here, guys. When you look forward, last question here is kind of the trends moving out of the next step, you know, this evolution of the mobile consumer. Hudson had an interesting number, 90% adoption rate with mobile and tablet use in the 18 to 44 crowd, I believe it was. That's a we're pretty much at.
We're there.
That's it.
It's over.
Yes.
That's it. Right.
So now it's a matter of who wins based on how well they do. What are your white horses coming out of this industry? Where do you think, you know, Annica, what do you think is going to really kind of propel brands in the future?
Yeah, you know, again, for us, I still go back to something that adds value to your life.
Okay.
You know, that your life is related to that brand. And one thing that I talked about on our panel, you know, what we'd like to integrate is like a beer tracker, because craft beer is very important to us.
Sure.
So we'd like to integrate a beer tracker into our app, and then you can rate the beers, and then, you know, like a la Amazon or a Pandora, it's going to let you know if you like this beer, you'd probably like this beer. Or people who liked this beer would also probably like this beer. Right. So yeah, exactly. Like, you know, so for our consumer, that's important.
Yeah.
Right. You know, they like craft beer. So, you know, we want to be able to deliver that kind of value
Very experiential
to you.
then.
Yeah, highly experiential for us.
Yeah.
You know, so again, I think it's got to be on brand, but really for us, we want to deliver something to you that you don't have otherwise. So you don't have to go to download some beer tracker app and take pictures of the, you know, we want to keep it within our brand framework.
Integrate, sure.
So that we become, you know, your go-to destination where you know you're going to get a great craft beer, and they're going to tell me when they have something new and interesting, and I'm going to be able to engage with the ratings of other beer drinkers and understand, you know, how I fit into that world. So,
I like that.
Yeah.
I love it. David, what do you think moving forward?
Well, I think moving forward, we're actually going to see a pretty important paradigm shift in how the restaurant industry controls itself and manages itself. Restaurants have all been about control. You have a defined concept, you have a brand, you train your staff in a certain way, you have centralized engagement. And then we had the social media explosion, and suddenly you couldn't control your brand in the same way, so information and the conversation around your restaurant became decentralized.
Right.
And brands are just now, I think, starting to come to terms with this, and Paul, you've been at the center of this from the very beginning.
Yep.
And I think brands are now a little bit more comfortable with this, they're starting to engage more, and they're willing to be in this uncontrolled conversation.
Right.
The next step is going to be uncontrolled commerce, right? The freeing of a brand's data so that other people can engage with it and create their own brand experience that the restaurant sort of supports, but from a hands-off way. So we're seeing brands are coming to us, big chains, saying, I have a very specific way I run my online engagement programs and my e-commerce businesses, but there's this whole population out there I don't know how to reach. How do I do that? Well, if you talk to consumers today, like I said before, that Venn diagram, they want it instant, they want it personal, and they want it local, right? So no brand is going to be able to adjust to the personal for everybody unless they free their information, let the consumers create the experience for themselves. And I think you're going to start to see a lessening of control that started with marketing and move all the way into commerce, and then who knows where it takes it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, it's been fun, of course, chatting with you on kind of the innovation of where mobile web versus apps are going to go. Thank you so much for stopping in on this episode of On Foodable.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.